each other through it. Come on and see, good movement draws good movement.
Welcome to Good Movement Draws Good Movement, the podcast where farmers, ranchers, and rural folks can grow relationally through awareness, understanding, and effective communication. Hey, it's T. I'm your host, and I, along with my guests, will be covering topics related to drawing good movement. Things like self and social awareness, brain science, positive psychology, extending grace, and so much more. We'll share tools that can help you understand why you are the way you are, why others are the way they are, and how you can use that to step out of self-told lies with grace and compassion to draw good movement in conversations, relationships, and life in rural America. Let's go draw good movement. Welcome back to the Good Movement Draws Good Movement podcast. Today, we're talking about something that we've talked about a couple of times here on the podcast, and I've been talking about it a little bit more here recently on Instagram. So if you follow me over there, you may have seen that I've been talking about boundaries. And the reason that I've been talking about boundaries is because it has come up quite a bit recently in conversation. So the conversation that started it all or reignited this talk about boundaries was a text message that I got. And it said, how do you even know what boundaries you need to set? From a person who historically hasn't set a lot of boundaries and doesn't know where to start. And my response was, well, I listen to my body. And if it's a no from my body, then it's a no from my mouth. So today I want to talk about how that isn't always very easy and what boundaries are and just dig a little bit deeper into boundaries, because I feel like a lot of us grew up thinking that we were responsible for other people's emotions, and that can get really confusing when you're a kid. And then as you become an adult and it shows up as guilt, shame, burnout, resentment, etc. So when I first started setting boundaries, and maybe I need to get Tom on here to talk about this, because I, for a long time, wasn't really great with boundaries either. But as I started to tune in more to the feelings and sensations in my body and learning what those meant, then I could use that to know where I needed to set a boundary. So it wasn't coming from my head. It was coming from the physical cues that my body was giving me. So a tight chest, if I couldn't breathe, or if my stomach felt all twisty and weird. I've learned that those are all signs that I need to set a boundary or that a boundary has been crossed. And I think this happens more often than not, or more often than we think, but we're taught to override those bodily cues. Like in our rural and ranching and agriculture community, we're hardworking, and that is an awesome thing to be hardworking and have the work ethic and the drive that we do. And also sometimes we push through and we ignore those signals from our body in the name of getting the job done or logic or being polite. So it does take some time, if that is what you've learned and how you've learned to make your way through the world. It does take some time to relearn what your body is saying. And then it takes even more time to trust that. It takes practice. It's not like a one and done deal. And because for so long, so many of us haven't been shutting the gates, and we've essentially been leaving all the gates open and setting no boundaries. When we start to set boundaries, it can feel uncomfortable, because for so long, being so available to everyone and their needs and their feelings is what kept us safe, literally kept us safe. When we were kids, it wasn't maybe always okay to say no or express your anger. So you learned to keep it quiet and do as the adults in your life said, and overriding what your body was saying and doing what they said because you literally relied on them for your survival. As a little teeny tiny baby human, we cannot survive without our adult caregivers. And so then not having those boundaries literally meant survival. It's what kept us safe. It's what kept us alive. We might have heard things like, oh, don't do that. That makes mommy, daddy, grandma, whoever sad. Or you hurt my feelings. And saying those things or hearing those things and taking those things in as kids teaches us that we are responsible or have responsibility in someone else's feelings, which is not at all true. But that's the message that some of us have picked up. And it's hard when you're a kid and you rely on those adults to set those boundaries. But now that we're adults, you're an adult, you are your survival. You are able to keep yourself alive. So you can say, those are their feelings, not mine, and set that boundary as needed. And it's probably going to feel uncomfortable at first, but tune into your body. And when your body says no, your mouth says no, because compassion doesn't mean carrying someone else's load. It means staying present with your own feelings while allowing other people to tend to their own feelings. When you do start to set those boundaries and you feel that discomfort start to rise, visualize yourself setting down what's not yours and remind yourself, this isn't mine. Don't pick it up. And just reassure yourself that you are safe and that this boundary is necessary and they are allowed to have feelings about it. And those feelings are valid. And they're also not yours to fix or process because you can't. As I'm talking about boundaries on Instagram and in conversations, this misconception comes up a fair amount. And the misconception is that boundaries mean walls, distance, no contact. And that's not necessarily what boundaries are. I like to think of boundaries as fences, which, you know, if you've tuned into this podcast and listened to any of the other episodes that I've recorded on boundaries, we have different types of fence on the ranch. We have pipe fence, we have barbed wire fence, we have electric fence, permanent electric fence, we have temporary string fence. And those fences are varying degrees of strength and permanence. The pipe fence is really strong and really permanent. The barbed wire fence is, a step down. The permanent hot wire is a step down. The temporary string fence is another step down. And what all of those fences have in common, no matter the strength or the permanence, is gates. So boundaries set in a healthy way, they have gates. So they're not a wall. They're not no contact. You can open the gate at any time, even on a pipe fence, and you can shut the gate at any time. Boundaries are about creating space for you to heal and grow your capacity. They are not about punishing or rejecting others or cutting them completely out of your life. That is not what they are about. Again, as the conversation continued on Instagram in my DMs, Paige, you'll remember Paige from episode 93. If you don't remember Paige, or if you didn't listen to that episode, I highly encourage you to go back and listen to it because it's fantastic. But Paige was in my DMs and we were talking about boundaries, and she brought up a really good point. She noticed that when she started setting boundaries, yes, it was uncomfortable at first. And now that she's gotten some practice with the boundaries and been able to close some gates and hold those boundaries, she has more capacity to show up for the people in her life. And she related it back to rotational grazing. And I thought it was such a fantastic analogy. And maybe it just hit for me because we do a lot of intense meadow rotation grazing during the summer, which I think Tom and I have talked about or mentioned here on the podcast. But I can see it so clearly here because we primarily graze meadows in the summer. We are hardly ever in our hill pastures during the summer. And what that does by rotating our animals through the meadows is gives the hills a chance to come back stronger so they have a higher carrying capacity and we have more feed through the winter. And I just think that that is such an excellent analogy and visual for what setting healthy boundaries does in your life. It's not about never going in that pasture again or never speaking to that person again. It's about giving yourself the space to rest and recover and grow your capacity so that you can show up for that person in that situation and not lose yourself in the process. And again, boundaries do not have to be permanent. Some of them can be permanent if that's necessary, but even like if you go back to the visual of the fence, all fences have gates. And you can choose which gates get open, at what time they get open, and you can choose which gates need to be closed. I don't know about anyone else or everyone else, I guess I should say. But in some of the conversations that I've been a part of recently that have been talking about boundaries, and even in my own personal experience, some of the trouble that I have come across, and like I said, other people I've been in conversation with have come across when it comes to setting boundaries, is seeing someone you love struggle and not being able to fix it for them. And you let go of all your boundaries. The gates are wide open and you are trying to do whatever you can to help them, to make it better for them. And that is a noble thing. And it also is not a sustainable thing. When we are trying to manage other people's emotions, ours go by the wayside and the lines of responsibility get blurred. And that ends up being a heartbreaking thing. And it's also heartbreaking when you realize that you can't heal someone else's pain. And there's also relief in that when you can set that down and heal your own and process your own feelings when you set those boundaries, like I said, so you can rest and recover and grow your capacity. And again, letting go and setting down isn't abandonment. It's in some ways trust. Trust that others have the ability and the capacity. Maybe they don't have the capacity. They have the ability to heal when they're ready. And they too have the ability to rest and recover and grow their capacity. So again, when we start setting boundaries, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for us. It's uncomfortable for the people who benefit from us not having boundaries. And when we practice setting boundaries and we can close those gates and hold some safe space for ourselves, things kind of get quiet. They get quieter. And it might be kind of lonely at first, but then as you grow that capacity, peace is what you feel. And again, boundaries are a way of protecting your energy and your nervous system so you can keep showing up for the things that matter, for the people that matter. Boundaries, healthy boundaries, because there is such a thing as unhealthy boundaries, but healthy boundaries create more connection, not less. So again, just to recap a little bit, because I feel like I've been all over the place on this episode, but the way I know when it's time to set a boundary is by listening to my body. If my body says no, then I know that my mouth should say no too. Boundaries are not about cutting people out. They're about creating space for healing and rest and recovery and growing your capacity. And you are not responsible for anyone else's emotional process. You're not. You can't process anyone else's emotions for them. I want to leave us with a little journal prompt this week, and that is, where in my life or my relationships do I need to let something rest so it has a chance to regrow? Where do I need to shut some gates? And with that, until next time, draw good movement. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm so grateful for you. If you found value in this episode, I'd love for you to share with others who might also benefit from tuning in. Share by word of mouth, send it in a text, take a screenshot and post it on social media, or share however you prefer. And if you haven't already, hit the follow or subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Until next time, draw good movement.